Aloha kako. Welcome to the hearing for the Committee on Culture, Arts, and International Affairs. Today is February 2nd, 10:31 a.m., and we are convening in room 329. Today we have with us Vice Chair. That's okay. Today we have with us today Vice Chair Tam, Reps Capella, and I believe that is it. Before we get started, I'm going to go over some brief housekeeping rules. There is a 2-minute time limit per testifier in order to allow as many testifiers to testify as possible. Please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is complete. The Zoom chat function will allow you to chat with the technical staff only. If you are disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If disconnected while presenting testimony, you may be allowed to continue if time permits. Please note that the House is not responsible for any bad internet connections on the testifier's end. In the event of catastrophic network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting for decision making. In that case, an appropriate notice will be posted. Lastly, please refrain from profanity or uncivil behavior. Such behavior may be grounds for removal from hearing without the ability to rejoin. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and roll into our agenda, starting off with HB 1765 relating to the Bernice Paui Bishop Museum. The first testifier we have on here is Bishop Museum.
Aloha Chair, aloha committee members. We stand on our written testimony. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. Oh, sorry. My name is Kaivi from Bishop Museum.
Hello, Kaivi. Okay. Seeing that was the only testifier that has noted they will be present for the Zoom. Is there anyone else on Zoom wishing to testify on HB 1765? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions? Seeing none, we're gonna go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, HB 1818, all for the previous testifier. First testifier we have for 1818, actually we do not have anyone that has noted they will be here to testify in person on Zoom. Is there anyone on Zoom wishing to testify on HB 1818? Okay, seeing none. Members, questions? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna go ahead and move on to HB 1923 relating to the creative workforce. First testifier we have is DBED.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. This is Georgia Skinner. I head up the Creative Industries Division at DBED. I'm speaking on behalf of our director, Mike McCartney. I just wanted to say that we do support the intent of this and have talked with JJ a little bit at the State Foundation on ways to perhaps help support the effort. There are a lot of directions within the testimony. We did offer comments. One of the tasks that DBED has is to convene a creative research task force, which unfortunately we haven't been able to do until recently. So we will provide all that information to the legislature as well as to the State Foundation, and note that there are many integrations of any kind of workforce development that should also be part of a dialogue with the Department of Labor and their Workforce Development Council. Thank you.
Mahalo for your testimony. We will go ahead and move on to State Foundation on Culture and Arts.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Jonathan Johnson, Director of State Foundation on Culture and Arts. And we stand on our written testimony that an appropriation to the foundation grants program would benefit Hawaii's creative workforce. Thank you.
Mahalo. Okay, next we have SAG AFTRA.
Hi, I'm Marisha Palma Elmore, and I'm the Executive Director of the Screen Actors Guild and American Federation of Television and Radio Artists for the Hawaii Local. We stand on our written testimony and support, but I also wanted to just take a couple of seconds to say thank you. Thank you for this forward-thinking bill, and thank you for your willingness to invest in our creative workforce. And I'm here for questions.
Mahalo. Appreciate you making time to testify today. Okay, with that, I don't have anyone else listed to be testifying on Zoom. Is there anyone on Zoom wishing to testify on HB 1923? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions? Oh, do we have somebody else? Okay. Okay, got it. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none. SFCA, can I get SFCA?
Sure.
Hey, JJ, how's it going?
Great.
So for this bill, we know it's something that we want to pursue to help with the creative resurgence after COVID has had a terrible impact on the industry. What ways do you think that we can see the growth for the creative industry by pushing this bill forward?
I think there's two ways. One is as an appropriation to the state foundation currently. We can actually move the money this year or the coming year through our grants program to organizations that actually create opportunities for learning with compensation. I believe we can target some of these now with that. Okay, so if we bring in an appropriation, move it through into our grants the way it is now, we could actually create a line where an organization who applies for, say, media arts, we could have a checkbox with an explanation of how they could meet these goals, okay, and aspirations. Okay, that's one direct way now that the legislature could say, okay, add to the funding. The second way is through working with the task force with budget and finance and creative industries to actually gather all the players and say, what steps can we take to address this? I think both are real valid. One is immediate and one is aspirational. And if we did both, I think Rep Gates, that would actually move this agenda because it's actually really, really important.
It is critical.
Thank you. Yes, could you
May I add
like to
to that?
speak a little bit more to this? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you again to the committee, both in the House and the Senate, for introducing this concept. I think JG is correct that there is an immediate opportunity within the State Foundation, who has a very sophisticated structure and a great team to be able to execute those grants. And I would say that there are the Good Jobs Challenge with the University of Hawaii, of which Creative Industries is also a part, that does designate additional funds and integrates with our work on this resurgence task force that we're doing. But I wanted to underscore something that I think is important for the viewers as well as the lawmakers to hear, and that is that this industry, particularly performing artists and creative sectors, other than, let's say, the film industry, which has been a boon for our economy, they have been hardest hit, and that's noted in the Brookings Institute report. And it's very, very important for us to embrace the fact that, yes, we should have a designation within the Department of Labor for creative workers. What is that? Is it a gig worker? And so the next pandemic, we won't be in this situation. That's our commitment from Creative Industries, which really focuses on the business of the arts.
Mahalo for that input. I guess going back to State Foundation on Culture and Arts. So in the bill, there's the grant program, and what I guess maybe it needs to be tightened up a little bit, and that's something that I'm interested in doing, is having State Foundation on Culture and Arts create specific guidelines to kind of not take away from certain things, but to ensure that the funding and the grants that are being provided through a bill like this would actually have some criteria that we can, as legislators, look at as well to be able to determine if the funding is being used appropriately. That's something that you folks are able to do?
Sure. And typically, for example, support of Native Hawaiian artists. So in our grants that we give out currently, there is a section of the application that would say, have specific language to say, okay, how do you do that as a grantee? And then on our final reporting, they actually explain that and articulate, and we're able to gather data on that. So if we did that this year to our grants that are existing, put in some language that right out of this California bill, we could actually, that's for FY23, we could actually gather data on who's doing what, because for the way the bill is written now, all the burden of administering the program is on the government, right? And for us to create that kind of system that already exists in these not-for-profit organizations would be duplicative, right? So you don't want us putting that burden on, but these guys are already in the field, whether it's Donkey Mill or whoever it is, they're actually bringing in young workers, educating them, mentoring them, and then putting them into the workforce. The bill, the way it's written, the way I see it, is that the very people we're trying to target would not be eligible if we administered it. And that has to do with their compliance. They'd have to have their own business license. They'd have to have all these structures that the government requires a grantee to have, the way it's written. So if we were to just run it through our grants program, have those organizations pay these people, train them, that would actually work. So yes, we can come up with the language fairly simply. Yeah.
I would agree with that, if I may. It's important that you have that structure because you're also looking for sustainability long-term. This is, traditionally grants are given, and that is a wonderful aspect of the ability to do this and give funding. But the wraparound services of how you navigate the business world and how you succeed after the training is, I think, where we can collaborate with language for JJ on the grants component. It is like, for example, Creative Lab Hawaii program, which does do the 360 for media and for music, now going into playwriting and visual arts. So that's something that I think is critical to include. And I think JJ is absolutely 100% right. Let's empower the organizations that are training people and hopefully give them the business wraparound services to ensure that they succeed. We're happy to contribute to the process.
Wonderful to hear. Good to hear that our state is in strong support of our local creative industries as well. So thank you so much for your testimony. I wanted to move on to our testifier for SAG. Are you still with us?
I am. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi.
So we understand that you represent over 1,200 actors, recording artists, media professionals, and and so forth. Can you kind of give us a little bit of the lay of the land with those folks that you were working with in the creative industry and how COVID has really negatively impacted their working situation?
I think I'm going to pull from the gig worker comment from earlier. The folks who do this work, while we represent union members and we have contracts that we work under, generally speaking, most everyone, they're gig workers. They're folks who get hired by the day to be police officer number 4 on Magnum PI or Navy person number 1 on NCIS, right? And on the other projects there. So they are hired by the day, and on any given day, they may work just like any other gig worker. But as part of the creative workforce, I think it's something that we need to remember is that, if we can have this infrastructure in place to train these workers so that, as the gigs are coming in or when they're not coming in, they're constantly working their craft. And this is something I tell a lot of folks who will call in and say, hey, I want to be a dancer. I want to be a musician. I want to be this. And, in Hawaii, when is the work coming? So I think one of the things this addresses is the time for before the work comes or while they're waiting for the work to come is to really develop the workforce so that when the work does come in, let's say this is something from, the continent or somewhere else, we can say, hey, we've got this strong creative workforce here that has been training and that's been working with the nonprofit partners that Mr. Johnson and George has been talking about. So that's why this, I think, is really helpful. And I hope that a bunch of testimony came in from our members, because I put a blast out there to make sure that they understood the importance of this for them. So that's just on the actor side. We also represent singers and dancers. And I think this would go a long way to help them out also, as far as developing their skills so that we are indeed a strong and sought after workforce. That's one of the things that we tend to have to combat sometimes is when folks want to come into Hawaii. Oh, well, who's going to work the jobs? That's one box checked off. Here's who's going to work the jobs. Here's our talented creative workforce that the state has, been helpful in investing in. I hope I answered your question. I think I did.
Yeah.
I answered your question.
No, you gave a great overview. I appreciate that and give us some insight to what the folks are dealing with. And as you mentioned, it is, very much like gig work, and it's something that we can definitely build on and create a more stronger foundation for them. So definitely, I'm in strong support of this bill as well, and it's great to have like-minded individuals to talk with and bounce ideas off of. So thank you all for testifying on that bill. I'm gonna give it back to the members. Any questions, follow-ups, concerns? Okay, seeing none, thank you for your testimony, and we're gonna move on to our next agenda item. So members, our next agenda item we have is HB 1924 relating to the Hawaii State Foundation on Culture and Arts. First testifier we have is the State Foundation on Culture and Arts.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. State Foundation stands on our written testimony in support. And just to let you know, after last year's hearings, we did create some new initiatives to fund both Bishop and Iolani through a cultural preservation award, seeing the direct need. And then we were also able to fund through generous support of ARPA funds to each of the organizations. So we have the system set up to do that, and we're prepared to do that again. Thank you.
Mahalo. Next testifier we have is Dylan R.
Hey, good morning, Chair Gates, Vice Chair Tam, members. Alan Carpenter, Assistant Administrator with State Parks. The department will stand on its written testimony, and I'd just like to briefly add that, due to the tremendous historical and cultural significance of Iolani Palace, we very much appreciate any support the Ledge can provide to bolster both the operations and the capital improvement needs of this treasured resource. And I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Mahalo. Next testifier we have is Mrs. Akana from Friends of Iolani Palace.
Hi, aloha kakahiaka, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. We stand on our testimony in support of this measure. The funding that we received through State Foundation this past year, especially the ARPA funds, has helped us to endure to where we are now. So we look forward to any way to have dedicated funding as we take care of this precious place. I know we talked about things falling apart, and I had showed everybody in recent hearings this piece of cast iron that fell down weighing 8 pounds. Because we are able to just go ahead and hire somebody to take a look, we just finished yesterday surveying all of the leaves in the column, and we have 17 more of these that we had to they just physically fell down into the hands of the Constructors Hawaii crew. So there's a lot of issues with our 140-year-old special place. So we thank you for your support. Aloha. Any questions? I'm available.
Mahalo. Thank you. I believe that was our last testifier. Is there anyone on Zoom wishing to testify on HB 1924? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none. I don't have any questions for the testifiers, but I do appreciate you folks making the time to be here, so thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on to HB 1957 relating to Medical Cannabis Day. First testifier we have is Akamai Cannabis Clinic.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide strong support for this measure. My name is Dr. Clifton Otto. I'm a cannabinoid medicine specialist and a certified provider for Hawaii's medical cannabis program. The idea for Medical Cannabis Day started in 2019 when looking for a way to honor our patients and raise awareness about the legitimate medical use of cannabis in Hawaii. As you probably know, the recreational use culture has April 20 or 420 as their unofficial holiday. So June 14 seemed like an appropriate day for Medical Cannabis Day because this was the day in 2000 when our state exercised its authority to decide how cannabis is used within the state. It took 3 years for the governor to proclaim Medical Cannabis Day for the state last year. And for the past 2 years, all 4 Hawaii mayors have proclaimed Medical Cannabis Day on June 14th for their respective counties. So why not make Medical Cannabis Day an annual day of recognition for the state? This would be a great way to honor our patients each year and raise awareness and provide education about the appropriate medical use of cannabis in Hawaii. Thank you for considering this measure, and I will be available for questions. Aloha.
Thank you very much. Seeing that Akamai was the only testifier, indicating that they would be testifying today, is there anyone else on Zoom wishing to testify on HB 1957? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none. With that being said, mahalo for being here to testify on HB 1957. We're gonna move on to our next agenda item, HB 2056, relating to Bishop Museum. First testifier we have is Bishop Museum.
Hello, Chair, members of the committee, Kaiwi, from Bishop Museum. We stand on our written testimony.
Okay, anyone else wishing to testify on HB 2056?
Sure, State Foundation.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sure, Chair, Vice Chair, members. State Foundation stands on our written testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else on Zoom wishing to testify on HB 2056? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions? Seeing none. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on to HB 2202. First testifier we have is Dylan R.
Good morning, and thank you to the committee. My name is Josh Atwood on behalf of Suzanne Case with the Department of Land and Natural Resources. We will stand on our written testimony in support and are available for questions. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Okay, I see we have 2 DLNR. Is there another person from DLNR? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna go ahead and move on to coordinating group on alien pest species.
Chair Gates, Vice Chair Tam, and members of the committee. My name is Kylie Lefebvre. I'm with a coordinating group on alien pest species, and I'm in support of this bill to designate ohia the state endemic tree. I'd just like to say that, not only does this bill recognize the importance of ohia, the ecological and economical importance, but it's also going to recognize the people who love and appreciate Ohia, and for those who put all their work and their time, trying to save Ohia and our native forests. And so that's so important. And recently I had the great opportunity to work with students across the state in teaching them a little bit about civics and how to participate in the legislative process, submitting testimony. You'll see that a little bit today too. So that's a part of our project, and they have been so excited to engage in this because of Ohia, because they love Ohia, and hopefully you guys have seen that in some of that testimony. In a way, it's going to be recognizing, their efforts as well and how much that they love and appreciate Ohia. So I really appreciate your time and your consideration for this bill, and mahalo for you.
Mahalo for your testimony. Really appreciate it. We're gonna go and move on to Manoa Elementary School.
Aloha, Chair Asuega and Asuega Gates, Vice Chair Tam, and members of the committee. I, Abigail Lo, am in support of HB 2202 relating to the state endemic tree, which would designate Ohia Lehua as the state endemic tree of Hawaii. The reason I think it's important to protect Ohia is because, first, it collects a lot of fresh water that flows into our watershed, and if rapid Ohia death continues to kill all of our Ohia plants, that would mean less fresh water in our watershed. Secondly, the flower is used to make cultural clothing or cultural things that remind people of Hawaiian culture. If people forget Hawaiian culture, the islands are just going to be natural or big tourist hotspot. Lastly, it provides shelter to native and non-native species, mostly birds. If the plant is gone, that would mean the native species would lose their homes. In conclusion, it is very important to protect the Ohia Lehua plant. Mahalo for your time and consideration. Best regard from Abigail Hulili Maike Kailohia at Manoa School, grade 5.
Aloha, I, Teheara Pimentel, am in support of HB 2202, relating to state endemic tree, which would designate Ohia Lehua as the state endemic tree of Hawaii. One reason you should make Ohia the state endemic tree of Hawaii is because if it were to go extinct, we would lose most of our native animals. Native animals live in Ohia and rely on Ohia as a place to keep them safe. That's their home. Ohia is like a warm place our natives can come home to. It can also affect our food chains. If one goes down, all the natives can go down with it. Ohia is an important part of Hawaii, so help treat it like it is. Another reason for you to make Ohia Hawaii state endemic tree is because Ohia provides a lot and is used a lot. For example, woodworking, building, and firewood. It is very important in our nature too. Ohia provides homes, food, and water for our animals. Lastly, Ohia is important to Hawaiian culture. Ohia is used for dancing, chanting, and stories. For dancing, Ohia has pretty flowers that are actually mostly used for dancing in our islands. Ohia is so important. Maybe even our Hawaiians will start a movement. Ohia is an important part of Hawaii. Let's treat it like it is. Mahalo for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Teheara Pimentel, Manoa Elementary School, grade 5.
Thank you.
Mahalo for your testimony. That was awesome. With that being said, members, any questions? Okay. Also, just wanted to make a final call out if there was anyone else wishing to testify on HB 2202. That was the last testifier on the list. Apologize. Okay, seeing none. All right, seeing no questions from the members either. Mahalo to all of our testifiers. We are going to move on to HB 2329. First testifier we have is Dylan R.
Aloha, Chair Gates, Vice Chair Tam, members of the committee. I'm Alan Downer. I'm the administrator of the State Historic Preservation Division. The department stands on its written testimony and support. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for being here. Noting that was the only testifier indicating they would be here to be testifying on Zoom. Is there anyone else on Zoom wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions? Seeing none. Thank you for your testimony. We're gonna move on to HB 2346. Our first testifier is State Foundation on Culture and Arts.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members. It's really difficult to follow children testifying. Okay, so that was amazing. I just have to give a shout out. And, you know, we stand on our written testimony and support that there is value to recognizing the contribution of Hawaii's most creative individuals. We do that through our Scholastic Art exhibit that's going to open up here next week at HISAM. And we really think there's value to recognizing the creative workforce that we have. Thank you.
Mahalo. Noting that State Foundation was the only person indicating that they would be testifying on Zoom. Is there anyone else on Zoom wishing to testify on HB 2346? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none. Mahalo for your testimony. We're gonna move on to our HB 2404 relating to compacts of free association. We did not receive anyone indicating that they would be attending on Zoom. Anyone on Zoom wishing to testify on HB 2404? Okay, seeing none. We're gonna move on to our last bill, members, HB 2445, relating to Volunteer Month. We have Hawaii Firearms Coalition.
Oh, sorry, just 1 minute here.
Problem.
Trying to get my video on here. Video. Okay. Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, Todd Yukutake with the Hawaii Firearms Coalition. We strongly support this bill. The Second Amendment community in Hawaii mainly consists of volunteers doing lots of things like running the ranges, training, safety programs. Even high school air rifle teams are all coached by volunteers. And we want to thank them. And I think this bill will go a step toward thanking them for their assistance. And we want to promote more volunteerism in the future. Thank you.
Mahalo. Appreciate you being here. Members, that was the only testifier that indicated they would be attending in Zoom. Is there anyone on Zoom wishing to testify on HB 2445? Okay. Members, any questions? Okay. Seeing none, we're gonna recess for decision making at 11:30. Recess. Aloha Kako, reconvening the February 9th, 10:30 a.m. Committee on Culture, Arts, and International Affairs, hearing for 11:30 a.m. decision-making. To clarify, this is the February 9th hearing. Earlier, we inadvertently said this is the February 2nd hearing. So just for clarification. So first agenda item we'll be voting on, members, is HB 1765 relating to Bishop Museum. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as an HD1, amending to defect the date to 2044 with technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Members, any questions? Seeing none. Oh, do we have somebody? Rep. Ward, did you have something to say?
No, I was just getting adjusted. Thank you. No questions.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We're going to go ahead for vote. Vice Chair.
Voting on House Bill 1765, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments. Chair, Vice Chair votes aye. Rep. Har.
Aye.
Rep. Capella.
Aye.
Rep. Nishimoto. Aye. Rep. Yamane.
Aye.
Rep. Ward. Rep. Ward, you're on mute.
Oh, aye.
Thank you. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. We're moving on to HB 2253 relating to Brother Joseph Dutton Day. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as the HB1, defecting the date to July 1st, 2044, with technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Members, any questions? Seeing none. Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 1818, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments, noting all members present. Any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Take a quick recess. I apologize for the inconvenience. So again, Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as an HD1, defecting the date to July 1st, 2044, adding technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting again on HB 1818, and Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments, noting all members present. Any reservations? Any noes? Chair, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next bill we have is HB 1923 relating to creative workforce. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as an HD1 with amendments, defecting the date. We're going to add language to have the State Foundation on Culture and Art establish rules and guidelines for applying for and issuing these grants. And we're going to add technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Any questions, members? Seeing none. Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 1923, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments, noting all members present. Any reservations? Any noes? Chair, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. We're going to move on to HB 1924. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as is. Questions, members? Okay, seeing none. Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 1924, Chair's recommendation is to pass it unamended. Noting all members present. Any reservations? Any noes? Chair, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 1957 relating to Medical Cannabis Day. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as is. Any questions?
Chair, I have, I guess, a comment you would say, or maybe a question. May I proceed?
Yep.
I'm not sure why we're glorifying Medical Marijuana Day. I mean, why not Penicillin Day or what for COVID or HIV cocktail day? Why are we sending a message to our youth that, hey, this is a day you can celebrate? Are we trying to do this so we can get recreational marijuana? I think it's not in good standing for where we are in terms of the drug culture and the message that it sends about what's serious about when we declare a day, it should have some significance and not a negative connotation, as I'm indicating. Thank you. I'm voting
Thank
no.
you, Rep. Ward. If you would like to introduce all of those great ideas that you mentioned, please do so. I will consider hearing those as well. I think this measure is to highlight the uses that medical cannabis users use this as a solution for their pain and other forms of medication. And so with that being said, I appreciate your comments and we will go ahead for the vote. Vice Chair?
Voting on House Bill 1957, Chair's recommendation is pass it unamended. Noting all members present, any reservations? And Rep. Ward with no, voting no,
Yes.
any other no's? Chair recommendation is adopted.
Okay, members voting on our next measure, HB 2056, relating to Bishop Museum. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as a HD1, defecting the date to July 1st, 2044, adding technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Any questions, comments, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2056, Chair's recommendation is to pass it with amendments. Noting all members present, any reservations? Any no's? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. HB 2202 is our next agenda item relating to state symbols. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as an HD1, defecting the date to 2044, July 1st, and adding technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Any questions or comments, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2202, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Noting all members present, any reservations? Any no's? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. We're going to move on to our next agenda item, HB 2329, relating to historic preservation. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as an HD1, remove specific sites from this measure. We will also put language in there for the State Foundation on Culture Arts, DLNR, HSTA, and others to consult with each other to assign areas of important sites. We are also defecting the date to July 1st, 2044, and adding technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Members, any questions?
Chair, question.
Go ahead. Rep. Ward.
Does that remove the birthplace site, which is actually right at the corner of my district, and Representative Hashim? They've been kind of harassed in the past. There's no reference to the birthplace site that you're saying that you're removing all references to anything specific?
Yes.
Okay,
Correct.
that is good. The only other side is that some people are saying, look, we wanted to go to managed tourism. The more we hype this up, the more visitors will want to come. So that's just the neighborhood issue and the Airbnb stuff. Anyway, I'm for it, so no problem.
Okay, mahalo. Any other questions, comments, members? See none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2329, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Noting all members present, any reservations? Any no's? Chair, recommendation is adopted.
Okay, members, voting on HB 2346 relating to the State Foundation on Culture and Arts. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as an HD1, defecting the date to July 1st, 2044, and adding technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Any questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2346, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Noting all members present, any reservations? Any no's? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. HB 2404 is our next agenda item relating to compacts of free association. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as a HD1, defecting the date to July 1st, 2044, and making technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Any questions?
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. This is a very important bill, and I'm quite disappointed that no department, from whether they're from the University of Hawaii, Department of Health, Department of Human Services or the Hawaii Public Housing Authority offered any kind of testimony in support or even comments on it. There's a lot to be done when we want to connect and to bridge the divide between government and the Micronesian community, and this will take a major step forward in that direction. So I want to thank the chair for passing this out.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Any other comments?
Chair, Ward here
Ward.
in the Zippy's parking lot, Kahala. I want to, how would you say, commend the Vice Speaker, because I feel exactly the same. This is something that is so important that not even one agency, one person could show up. That is benign neglect for a community that needs really a lot of support. And I hope this will lead to, otherwise, the COFA, the Compact of Free Association, where we say, come on, Washington, President and Congress, get the renegotiation going, because that's what the lifeline is for these COFA nations. So with that, I hope, even though there's a rule of thumb where, you don't get testifiers, you don't pass it, I hope you do pass it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, our goal is to move this forward and to continue the discussion. So with that being said, any other questions, comments, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voted in House Bill 2404, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting all members present. Any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Right on, members. This is our last agenda item, HB 2445, related to Volunteer Month. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as a HD1, defecting the date and making technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Members, any questions, comments? Seeing none?
Chair, a brief
Go ahead,
comment.
Ward.
As a former Peace Corps volunteer, I'm much indebted to you. Thank you for acknowledging this, but it's the best 2 years of my life anyway. Thank you.
Mahalo. Thank you for sharing that. We are going to go for the vote if there's no other questions or comments.
Voting on House Bill 2445, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments, noting all members present. Any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Hearing adjourned.
Aloha.